A mafia boss couldn't walk through the door of a vet clinic, so he left his dying dog on the steps with $50,000 in cash and a single sentence that would pull a struggling veterinarian into his world. That veterinarian was Catherine Shepherd, and her clinic was 3 months from closing. The German Shepherd on her steps was bleeding out, and the note tucked in its collar didn't ask for help. It gave an order that connected her life to a shadow empire. She saved the dog, but the man who owned it would now own a piece of her world, and his enemies would notice. Catherine's life had been reduced to spreadsheets and panic. The loan was due in 90 days. She was the only vet for 20 blocks in a neighborhood where people loved their pets but couldn't always pay to save them. Every night, she tallied the losses. That night, the storm had kept her late, doing paperwork under the flickering fluorescent light of her back office, when she heard the whimper at the service entrance. She found the dog lying in a pool of rainwater and blood, a massive German Shepherd with a gunshot wound to its shoulder. Taped to its leather collar was a thick envelope of $100 bills, and a note written in precise, masculine script. It read, "Fix him. Tell no one. There will be more." The money was $50,000 in used, non-sequential bills, more than enough to cover the surgery, the medications, the months of recovery, more than enough to make her last loan payment. The moral calculus was instant and terrifying. She could call the police and watch her clinic fail, her life's work auctioned off, or she could take the mysterious A at his word. For 3 hours she operated. The bullet had splintered, nicking an artery. It was delicate, bloody work. She saved the dog, whom she named Sergeant for his stoic silence, and she kept the money, hiding the envelope in a hollowed-out veterinary manual on her shelf. But here's the thing about entering a secret agreement with a ghost. You start seeing his silhouette everywhere. Alessio the Shadow Conti wasn't a myth. He was a logistical phantom. Law enforcement knew his name, his rumored holdings in waste management and construction, but they'd never gotten a photo, a recording, a witness who would live to testify. His power came from silence and sudden, irrevocable action. His one documented weakness, according to a single FBI behavioral profile, was an abnormal attachment to the German Shepherd he'd owned since it was a pup, a dog named Leonidas. When Leonidas went missing the same night a rival outfit's warehouse was shot up, the whispers started on the street. The Borelli family, Alessio's main rivals, saw an opportunity. A wounded dog was a wounded master. They put out feelers. They offered rewards. They wanted to find the vet. Catherine, oblivious, focused on her patient. Sergeant began to heal. He was regal, intelligent, and fiercely protective of her. He'd station himself at the clinic's front door, a silent sentinel. The money bought her time, but it also bought paranoia. Every unfamiliar car, every wrong number phone call made her jump. Then 2 weeks after the surgery, the first test came. A man in a cheap suit walked in, claiming his cat was sick. He had no cat. His eyes scanned the treatment rooms, lingering on Sergeant's large kennel. He asked odd, pointed questions about her after-hours services, about whether she ever took in strays. Catherine's nurse's instinct flared. She lied, said Sergeant was a police K-9 recovering from a training injury. The man left, unsatisfied. That night she found the note. Slipped under her apartment door, a single line typed on plain paper. "We know you have him. The Borellis send their regards." The threat was clear. They hadn't found her by accident. Someone had talked. Maybe the supplier who sold her the specific antibiotics she'd ordered. Maybe a neighbor who saw the large dog. She was in the crosshairs of a war she didn't understand. The $50,000 was no longer a lifeline. It was a target painted on her back. She thought about running, but running meant abandoning Sergeant, abandoning her clinic, becoming exactly what A had told her not to be, a person who talks. So she made a choice. She went to the hollowed-out book, took $5,000 from the envelope, and used it to hire a security consultant, a former police detective named Miller who was now private. She showed him the threat. She told him a partial truth. A dangerous man had left his dog, and now other dangerous men were looking for it. Miller installed cameras. He taught her basic security, and he told her one brutal truth. You're not a player in this. You're the board they're playing on. Your only move is to give the dog back to the right monster before the wrong one finds you. But how do you return a dog to a ghost? She waited for a sign, for another note, for anything. It never came. Instead, Sergeant's health took a turn. An infection set in. He needed a stronger, rarer antibiotic, one her supplier didn't carry. She had to call in a special order, using her name, her clinic's address. It was a trail, and she had no choice but to leave it. The medication arrived on a Tuesday, so did the black sedan. It idled across the street from the clinic all afternoon. Catherine watched from the window, Sergeant leaning against her leg, a low growl in his throat. She called Miller. He told her to lock up, turn off the lights, and wait. She sat in the dark, listening. Sergeant's ears were perked, his body rigid. At exactly 9 o'clock, the clinic's landline rang. The sound was a gunshot in the silence. She let it go to the ancient answering machine. Her own voice played, then a beep, then a new voice, calm, deep, and chillingly final. Dr. Shepard, the medicine arrived. Good, keep him alive. The men watching you are not mine. Do not leave. I am coming to you now. The line went dead. The voice was the one from the note. It was Alessio Conti, and he was no longer a ghost. He was a man coming through her door. Catherine looked at Sergeant, then at the empty reception area. The safety of her world ended the moment she'd opened that envelope. Now, the architect of the danger was coming to collect his dog, and she had no idea if he was coming to thank her or to silence her forever. He didn't knock. The lock on the clinic's back door disengaged with a soft click, a skill that spoke of a different kind of expertise. Catherine watched the silhouette fill the doorway, backlit by the alley's single security lamp. Alessio Conti was taller than she imagined, and his silence was heavier. Dr. Shepard. His voice was the one from the phone, a low vibration in the dark room. The lights, please. She flicked the switch. The man in her clinic was in his late 30s with olive skin and dark hair swept back. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, no tie. He wasn't handsome in a conventional way. His face was all sharp angles and quiet intensity, the kind that missed nothing. His eyes went past her immediately, searching. They found Sergeant, who had struggled to his feet in the kennel, his tail giving a single, weak thump. A fracture appeared in Alessio's composure. Just a flicker in his jaw, a slight softening around his eyes. "Leo," he murmured. Then the mask slid back into place. He turned his full attention to Catherine. "You followed the instructions." "I saved his life," she corrected, her voice steadier than she felt. "The bullet nicked the brachial artery. He lost a lot of blood." "Who else knows he is here?" The question was casual, but the implication was a blade. "No one. My nurse is part-time. She wasn't here that night." Catherine crossed her arms. "The man who came asking questions in the car outside, they found me anyway." Alessio's gaze swept the clinic, nodding the cameras Miller installed, the reinforced back door. "You hired security. Smart, but not smart enough. The Borellas have a man at the pharmaceutical distributor. They tracked the antibiotic." He moved towards Sergeant's kennel, and Catherine instinctively stepped between them. He stopped, raising an eyebrow. "He is my dog. And he's my patient. He's immunocompromised right now. You don't get to barge in here after leaving him to die on a stoop." The words spilled out, fueled by weeks of fear. To her shock, Alessio didn't react with anger. He studied her, as if recalibrating. "I did not leave him to die," he said, each word precise. "I left him with the only person in this city I believed could save him and would not talk. Your financial records are persuasive motivation for discretion." He gestured to the envelope she'd left on the counter. "You used only $5,000 for the security. The rest is here." "It's blood money," Catherine snapped. "I took it because I had to. Now take your dog and your cash and leave. The Borellas can have you both." Alessio didn't move. "If I walk out that door with him tonight, we will be dead before sunrise. The Borellas have teams on every route from this neighborhood. They are not looking for me. They are waiting for me to come for him. You are not a loose end, doctor. You are the trap. The reality of it settled over her, cold and suffocating. She wasn't just caught in the middle, she was the bait. So what? You just stay here. For now, and you will continue to be his doctor. He finally moved past her, kneeling before the kennel. He didn't open it. He simply pressed his fingers against the mesh. Sergeant Leo limped over and pressed his nose to Alessio's fingertips. The simple act of trust was devastatingly intimate. "Tell me what he needs," Alessio said, his back to her. And just like that, Catherine's clinic became a fortress. Alessio made a single phone call. Within an hour, 2 men arrived, silent, efficient. They replaced her cameras with their own, installed sensors on the windows, and set up a monitoring station in her unused storage room. One of them, a man named Enzo who had a kind face and cold eyes, handed her a panic button disguised as a key fob. "For your pocket always," he said. Alessio claimed her tiny office as a command post. Maps of the city appeared on the walls, marked with red and blue dots. He explained in detached clinical terms the nature of the war. The Borelli family was making a push for his territory, specifically his portside warehouses. The attack that wounded Leo was a message: nothing you love is safe. "They thought wounding him would draw me out, make me emotional, reckless," Alessio said, staring at the map. "They were correct. Which is why I cannot leave until I know the exit is clean." For 3 days, they existed in a tense truce. Catherine treated Leo, changing his bandages, administering antibiotics. Alessio watched, a silent shadow. He asked technical questions about the surgery, the infection, the prognosis. His inquiries were sharp, specific. She realized he was cross-checking her story, verifying her expertise against the evidence of Leo's healing body. On the 4th night, the trap sprung. The monitors in the storage room blared an alert. 4 heat signatures moving through the adjacent vacant lot, approaching the clinic's rear wall. Alessio was on his feet instantly, a gun appearing in his hand as if by magic. "Enzo, front, Luca with me. Doctor, the safe room. Now." He'd had a panic room installed behind a false wall in the pharmacy. Catherine froze, clutching Leo's collar. "I'm not leaving him. He will be with you." Alessio's voice left no room for argument. He helped her guide the still weak dog into the cramped, steel-lined space. As he began to close the door, she grabbed his wrist. "They'll kill you." He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. "They will try." The door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. Catherine sat in the pitch black, Leo's head in her lap, listening to the muffled sounds of hell breaking loose. Silenced gunshots, shouts, a crash of breaking glass. Then an explosion that shook the very foundation of the building. The power died, plunging the safe room into total darkness. The air filtration system whirred to a stop. She had maybe 30 minutes of air. Leo whined, sensing her panic. She fumbled for the panic button Enzo had given her, pressing it over and over. No response. The comms were dead. They were buried alive. 20 minutes later, just as the air began to taste stale and metallic, she heard the grind of metal on metal. The door swung open. Alessio stood there, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt stained with smoke and a dark, spreading bloom of red on his shoulder. Behind him, the clinic was a ruin of shattered equipment and chemical smoke. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. "No, you are. Her training took over. Sit, let me see." He didn't protest. In the wreckage of her treatment room, she cut away his shirt. The wound was a deep graze, painful but not critical. As she cleaned and stitched it, he told her what happened. The Borellis had sent a cleanup crew, not just to grab Leo, but to eliminate the clinic and everyone in it. A gas line had been ruptured, the explosion meant to cover the evidence. Alessio's men had taken out 3 of them. 1 got away. "He saw me," Alessio said, wincing as she pulled the suture. "He will report that I am here, that I am wounded. The next team will be larger." "Then we have to leave," Catherine said, tying off the bandage. "We cannot. My car is compromised. Every route is watched." He looked around at the destruction, her life's work obliterated. I have cost you everything." In that moment, something broke in Catherine, not into pieces but into clarity. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, surgical anger. "No, they cost me everything. You just brought their war to my door." She stood up. "You need a way out they'll never expect." She led him to the ruined front office, to a framed photo on the floor. It showed her and her late father, a county sheriff, standing beside his old truck at their hunting cabin upstate. "It's 6 hours north, isolated. No one knows about it. Not my friends, not the bank. It's off the grid." She met his eyes. "You can disappear there until Leo is healed and you can plan your countermove." Alessio stared at her, then at the photo. "Why would you offer this?" "Because if you die here, they will kill me and Leo anyway. And because I want my clinic back. To get it, I need you to win your war." It was the most practical, terrifying thing she'd ever said. He nodded slowly. "We leave in 1 hour. Bring only what is essential for Leo." The escape was a masterpiece of misdirection. Enzo and Luca created a decoy convoy that drew the Borelli watchers away, while Alessio, Catherine, and Leo slipped out the back in her own battered, inconspicuous SUV. They drove through the night, following back roads. Leo slept in the back, sedated for the journey. Alessio watched the mirrors, his hand never far from his weapon. Just before dawn, they reached the cabin. It was a simple, sturdy structure nestled in dense pine forest. While Alessio secured the perimeter, Catherine got Leo settled by the fireplace. The silence of the woods was absolute, a stark contrast to the urban war zone they'd left. For a week, they existed in a strange, suspended reality. Catherine focused on Leo's recovery. Alessio spent hours on a secure satellite phone, his voice low and commanding, rebuilding his intelligence network from a distance. He learned that the Borellis had declared him dead, killed in the clinic explosion. They were moving quickly to seize his assets. His own organization was in disarray, unsure if their leader had fallen. One evening, Catherine found him staring into the fire, the frustration etched on his face. "You have to go back," she said softly. "I cannot, not yet. To return without leverage is to walk into a coffin." He looked at Leo, who was now walking with only a slight limp. "You have given me time, but time is running out." The next morning, the solution came from an unexpected place. Catherine was reviewing the last of Leo's medical files on her laptop, which had a weak satellite internet connection. An alert popped up, a local news article from the city. The Borelli family's legal front, a commercial real estate firm, was finalizing a major deal to purchase the very port warehouses they'd tried to seize from Alessio. The signing was in 48 hours. The article quoted the firm's proud, publicly clean CEO, Dominic Borelli. She showed Alessio. "This is it, isn't it? The public victory if they sign this. They legitimize the theft. My people will see it as proof I am gone. They will fold." He stared at the screen, then at her. "There is a way, but it requires you to go back." He laid out the plan. It was audacious and deeply dangerous. Catherine would return to the city alone, to her ruined clinic. She would play the traumatized, lucky-to-be-alive veterinarian, harassed by the mob. She would file an insurance claim, give interviews. And in doing so, she would get close to the one person who could sink the Borelli deal, an ethical, by-the-book city councilwoman who chaired the zoning committee. That councilwoman, Alessio had learned, was fighting the warehouse sale, suspicious of the Borelli's sudden bid. She was also a passionate animal rights advocate with 3 rescue dogs. "You be the victim who loves animals," Alessio said. "You tell her your story, a clinic bombed by mob violence. You gain her sympathy, her trust, and then you give her the evidence she needs to delay the sale." He handed her a flash drive. Financial records, proof the Borelli firm is funneling money through shell companies. It's not enough for the FBI, but it's more than enough for a zoning committee to demand a 6-month investigation. Catherine held the tiny drive. It felt like a live grenade. "And if they find out it came from me, then you will already be under my protection, but they cannot know." He stepped closer. "This is the pivot, Catherine. You walk into the light, and you pull their empire into the open where I can hit it, or we stay in these woods until they eventually find us and finish the job." She looked at Leo, then at Alessio's waiting, grim face. She had saved the dog. Now she was being asked to save the man, and in doing so, she would have to become a player in the very world she feared. She tucked the flash drive into her pocket. The weight of it was nothing compared to the weight of the choice. Returning to the city felt like walking back into a burning building. Catherine's clinic was a boarded-up crime scene, a monument to her old life. Her new life was a flash drive in her pocket and a story she had to sell to the one person who could change the game. Councilwoman Alina Vance was a formidable woman in her 60s, known for her sharp intellect and sharper temper. Getting to her required navigating a wall of aides. Catherine used the only currency she had, the truth, carefully edited. She called Vance's office, not as a veterinarian, but as a victim of organized crime whose business had been bombed. She mentioned her father, the sheriff, a name that still carried weight in certain circles. It got her a 15-minute meeting. Sitting in Vance's austere office, surrounded by photos of her with various rescued dogs, Catherine laid out her story. She told of the late-night attack, the explosion, her narrow escape. She spoke of her fear that it was related to neighborhood tensions. She never mentioned Alessio Conti. She never mentioned the Borellis by name. But she wept genuinely for her destroyed clinic, for the animals she could no longer treat. Vance listened, her expression softening from politician skepticism to maternal concern. "And you think this was tied to the Borelli family's expansion?" Vance asked, cutting to the heart of it. "I don't know who," Catherine said, wiping her eyes. "But after I refused to sell my property to a developer last year, the threats started. Anonymous calls. Then the man asking questions at my clinic. Then this." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Councilwoman, I'm scared. And if they're doing this to me, a nobody with a vet clinic, what are they doing to get what they really want?" It was the perfect lead. Vance's eyes hardened. "The port deal." Catherine nodded. "I don't have proof, but I have a feeling, and in my experience, a feeling is just a fact waiting to be found." She took the flash drive from her purse, placing it on the desk between them. "After the fire, I found this in my ruined office. It was in a melted desk drawer. I don't know what's on it. I'm too afraid to look. But maybe someone should." Vance stared at the drive as if it were a venomous insect. She knew exactly what accepting it meant. It was opposition research. It was a weapon. After a long minute, she swept it into her desk drawer. "Leave it with me, dear. And for God's sake, be careful. These people play for keeps." The plan was in motion. But as Catherine left City Hall, the first sign of counter-surveillance appeared. A man reading a newspaper on a bench too intently. A van that pulled out just as her taxi did. Alessio's warning echoed in her head. They will be watching her now, too. She went to a pre-arranged safe house, a modest apartment owned by one of Alessio's shell corporations. Enzo was there, a grim presence. "The meeting was successful," she reported. "Good," Enzo said, checking his phone. "The boss says to stay put. Vance's committee meets tomorrow. We'll know then." But the Borellis weren't waiting. That evening, the news broke. A whistleblower had provided the zoning committee with explosive financial discrepancies related to the Borelli Realty bid. The vote was delayed indefinitely, pending a full forensic audit. Dominic Borelli gave a furious press conference, denouncing a political witch hunt. In the shadows, Alessio moved. With the public deal frozen, his demoralized captains saw an opening. The rumor of his death was now a liability for the Borellis. Alessio, from his remote cabin, began re-establishing contact, using layers of cutouts and codes. The message was simple: "I am alive. The Borellis are weakened. Hold the line." Catherine watched from the sidelines, a ghost in her own city. But the Borellis, humiliated and furious, began turning over every stone. And they had a lot of stones to turn. 48 hours after the deal collapsed, Catherine received a visitor at the safe house. It wasn't a soldier. It was a lawyer impeccably dressed, carrying a briefcase. He introduced himself as Robert Thorne, representing Borelli interests. My clients are deeply troubled by the slanderous allegations that have derailed a legitimate business transaction, Thorne said, his smile not reaching his eyes. They believe you may have been misled, Dr. Shepard, perhaps threatened by other parties with a vested interest. I don't know what you're talking about, Catherine said, her heart hammering. Of course, Thorne opened his briefcase. He didn't pull out legal documents. He pulled out photographs, pictures of her mother who lived in Florida, pictures of her sister dropping her kids at school in Ohio. My clients are reasonable. They want the committee to receive a clarifying statement, a simple affidavit from you, stating you have no knowledge of any financial malfeasance and that you regret any unintended implication your tragic accident may have caused. In return, he slid a check across the table. It was made out to her for $250,000 for the rebuild of your clinic, no strings beyond the affidavit. It was a masterstroke, not a threat but an offer, a way out. She could take the money, clear her name, rebuild her life, and walk away from Alessio Conti and his war forever. All it would cost was the truth she'd sworn to hide. She told Thorne she needed to think. He left the check on the table. The moment he was gone, she called the secure number Alessio had given her. He answered on the first ring. They came to you, he said before she could speak. It wasn't a question. They have pictures of my family. They offered me $250,000 to recant. There was a long silence on the line. She could almost hear him thinking, calculating. You should take it, he said finally, his voice flat. What? Take the money, sign the paper. It is the smart play. It gets your family out of the crossfire. It gives you your life back. And what about you and Leo? The second I sign that, Vance's investigation loses all credibility. The deal goes through. You lose. That, Alessio said slowly, is no longer your concern. You have done more than enough. This was the risk, the countermove. I will handle it. But here's the thing about stepping into a world of shadows. The light starts to feel strange. Catherine looked at the check. It was salvation, but it was also a betrayal. Of Councilwoman Vance, who had trusted her, of the principle that the Borellis shouldn't win, and though she hated to admit it, of Alessio. He had trusted her with his dog, with his weakness, with his plan. To take the money felt like suturing the artery she had just fought to keep open. No, she heard herself say, I'm not signing anything. Catherine, be rational. I am being rational, she snapped. If I take this, they own me. They'll always own me. Every permit, every inspection, they'll be there. This isn't an exit, it's a longer, quieter prison. She took a deep breath. What's your next move, now that they've shown their hand? Alessio was quiet for so long she thought the line had dropped. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost respectful. The check is a traceable instrument from a specific account. Thorne is not just a lawyer, he is Dominic Borelli's personal fixer. His visit and this bribe attempt is evidence of their desperation and their guilt. We do not give it to Vance, we give it to someone else. Who? A reporter, one who has been chasing the Borelli story for years but could never get a source on the record. You will be that source. You will go public. You will tell everything, the attack on your clinic, the attempted bribe, the threat to your family. You will not mention me. You will say you believe it is tied to your refusal to sell your property. The audacity of it stole her breath. It was taking the fight from the shadowy committee room and blasting it across the front page. It would make her the most visible target in the city. They'll kill me. Not if you are surrounded by cameras. Not if your story is the lead on every news channel. Their power is in secrecy. You will burn that secrecy down. And while they are scrambling to put out that fire, I will be walking back in the front door. It was the "it gets worse" moment transformed into a weapon. She would have to become the story to survive it. With Alessio's guidance, she contacted the reporter, a relentless investigative journalist named Mara Chen. She handed over the check, told her about Thorne's visit, showed her the photos. She gave a tearful, televised press conference on the steps of her boarded-up clinic, with Councilwoman Vance standing stoically beside her. The story exploded. BORRELLI family accused of BOMBING bribery. The public outcry was immediate. The audit was no longer a zoning issue. It was a criminal investigation. The district attorney's office got involved. And in the chaos, Alessio Conti came home. Not in secret, but with a statement delivered by his newly confident lawyers, expressing his relief that the violence plaguing the waterfront was finally being addressed and reaffirming his company's commitment to the city. He was a businessman, back from an extended trip abroad, not a ghost. He came to see her the night he returned. He found her in the safe house, exhausted, watching her own face on the news. Leo was at his side, fully healed, a powerful presence. The dog went to Catherine immediately, nudging her hand. "It is done," Alessio said. "The Borellis are paralyzed. My people are back in line. The territory is secure." Catherine nodded, numb. "Good. Then we're done too. You have your dog and your empire back. I want my clinic back. We're even." Alessio didn't leave. He studied her, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hand still trembled slightly. "It is not that simple. You are a public figure now, an enemy of the Borelli family. They will not forget that. So I'll get a security detail. I'll move, You will be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life." He stepped closer. "Or you can have the protection of the man who caused the problem, not as a hostage, not as bait, as a partner." The word hung in the air, partner. "I don't want to be in your world," she whispered. "You already are. The only question is whether you walk through it in fear or with power." He gestured to Leo. "You gave me back my family. Let me give you back your life, but one that cannot be so easily destroyed. A new clinic, the best equipment, funding for a non-profit to treat the animals of people who cannot pay. A fortress, not a target." It was everything she had ever wanted for her work, offered by the last person on earth she should take it from. It was the culmination of every choice since she'd opened that envelope. The safe path was gone. In front of her were two doors, a lifetime of hiding or a partnership with the devil who owed her a debt. She looked from Alessio's expectant face to Leo's loyal, trusting eyes. The war was over, but the negotiation for her soul was just beginning. Catherine took the deal, not for the power and not for the man, but for the animals. She would let Alessio Conti build her a fortress, so long as its primary purpose remained a sanctuary. It was a devil's bargain, and she became its architect. The terms were written in a formal contract, drafted by Alessio's lawyers. It established the Shepherd Conti Foundation, a nonprofit animal hospital. Catherine would be the sole medical director, with full autonomy over all veterinary decisions. Alessio would be the silent benefactor, funneling capital through a network of legitimate businesses. The burned-out clinic was demolished. In its place rose a state-of-the-art animal medical center, with bulletproof glass, a dedicated security wing run by Enzo, and a subsidized treatment program for low-income pet owners. To the neighborhood, it was a miracle. To the Borellis, it was a flag planted firmly on conquered ground. The public downfall of the Borelli family was swift and brutal. The district attorney's investigation, fueled by the public outrage Catherine had stirred, uncovered a tangle of fraud, extortion, and tax evasion. Dominic Borelli was indicted on 17 counts. His empire crumbled as associates cut deals to save themselves. Alessio's organization, now publicly rebranded as a consortium of logistics and construction firms, absorbed the remaining viable assets at auction. The war was over, and the shadow had won by stepping into the light. For Catherine, victory was a daily exercise in balance. Her new hospital was a dream. She could save every animal that came through the door, regardless of the owner's ability to pay. But the price was a life entwined with Alessio Conti. He was a constant, quiet presence. He'd visit weekly, always with Leo, to review the foundation's books. Their meetings were strictly professional, but the undercurrent was a live wire. He respected her boundaries, but his protection was absolute and obvious. Her staff was vetted by Enzo. Her suppliers were pre-approved. Her home was a secure apartment above the hospital. She told herself it was a business arrangement. Until the night of the gala. The foundation's grand opening fundraiser was a glittering event, attended by the city's elite, including Councilwoman Vance. Catherine, in a dress she couldn't afford, gave a speech about second chances. She saw Alessio across the room, surrounded by politicians and businessmen, watching her with an unreadable expression. Afterward, as she escaped to the rooftop garden for air, he found her. "You were impressive," he said, leaning on the railing beside her. "I was terrified. Public speaking is worse than surgery. Yet you did it to save a dog you never met." He looked at her, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. "Why did you really say yes to my offer, Catherine? It wasn't just for the clinic." She was silent for a long moment. "Because when I saw Leo on my steps, I saw a creature that powerful men had tried to break just to send a message, and he survived. I wanted my work to be about that survival. Your money lets me do that. Your world makes it necessary." She turned to him. "Why did you really offer it? You owed me nothing. A cash payment would have been cleaner." Alessio didn't answer immediately. He watched the traffic flow below. "When I was a boy, my father taught me that vulnerability is a crack in your armor. You must seal it or be destroyed. Leo was my crack. You saw it. And instead of exploiting it, you healed it." He met her gaze. "I have spent my life sealing cracks. You are the first person who ever tried to heal one. I do not know what to do with that." It was the most vulnerable thing he had ever said to her. The wall between the Mafia boss and the man was gone. In that moment, the professional partnership shifted, deepening into something fragile and real. They didn't kiss. They didn't embrace. They just stood in the quiet understanding that they had seen each other's core and had not looked away. The following months settled into a new, complex normal. Catherine ran her hospital. Alessio ran his legitimate empire, while the darker elements of his past receded, managed by trusted lieutenants. They were partners in public and something more tentative in private. He taught her about leverage and negotiation. She taught him about empathy and the quiet courage of healing. Leo was their constant bridge, dividing his time between Alessio's penthouse and the hospital, a beloved mascot. But the past never fully dies. One rainy Thursday, a man walked into the hospital. He was elderly, well-dressed, and carrying a small, shivering chihuahua. He gave a false name, but Catherine recognized him from newspaper archives. Silvio Borelli, Dominic's uncle, the retired old guard of the family. He was alone, no guards. His dog was genuinely sick, suffering from congestive heart failure. Her staff, unaware, checked the dog in. Catherine felt the ice of old fear. This was a test or a trap. She called Alessio. His response was immediate and fierce. "I will have men there in 5 minutes. Have Enzo remove him." "No," Catherine said, watching the old man through the glass, gently stroking his dying dog. "He's not here for a fight. He's here because he's heard this is the best place for his dog. This is what we built. We either believe in it or we don't." Alessio was silent. "You are either the bravest or most foolish person I know." "I'm a veterinarian," she said and hung up. She treated Silvio Borelli's dog herself. She explained the prognosis, the treatment options. The old man listened, his eyes sharp with intelligence and grief. When she finished, he didn't speak of the war, the loss, the humiliation. He simply said, "You are as good as they say. Do what you can for him." He paid in cash and left. The dog stayed for 3 days. On the day it was well enough to go home, Silvio returned. As Catherine handed him the carrier, he paused. "My nephew is a fool. He thought strength was only in taking. You and your partner have shown it is also in building." He looked around the bright, clean hospital. "This is a good thing you have made from the ashes. Do not let anyone destroy it, even us." It was not forgiveness. It was a ceasefire, a recognition. When Catherine told Alessio, he simply nodded. "You have won us more security with a stethoscope than I ever did with a gun," he said, a note of awe in his voice. The final piece of the past was resolved unexpectedly. Catherine, clearing out the last of her old clinic storage, found the original envelope of cash. The $50,000 minus the $5,000 she'd spent. She had never touched the rest. She brought it to Alessio along with the original note. "Fix him. Tell no one. There will be more." "This belongs to you," she said, placing it on his desk. He looked at the money, then at the note. "Keep it. It was a fee for services rendered." "I didn't do it for a fee. I did it for the dog." "I know." He picked up the note, a faint, uncharacteristic smile touching his lips. "This was a lie, you know." "What?" It wasn't for Alessio, it was for Angelo, my father's name." He looked up at her. "I was not leaving instructions for a veterinarian. I was leaving a message for my father in case I didn't survive the night to come for Leo myself. It was a confession of failure. Fix my mistake, my weakness. Tell no one asterisk. Do not let my shame be known. There will be more asterisk, more money, more obligation, more of my life owed to you." Catherine stared at him, the entire story recontextualized in an instant. The note wasn't a transaction. It was a dying man's plea for his dog, written in a code only he understood. She had saved more than a dog that night. She had saved a man from his own myth of invulnerability. "So the partnership," she asked softly, "the hospital, all of this?" "All of this," Alessio said, stepping around the desk, "is the more, the life owed, the crack healed." He was close now. "But it is no longer an obligation, Catherine. It is a choice. My choice." He didn't wait for her answer. He simply took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles, a gesture of possession and profound respect. The money, the note, the past, it was all just paper now. The real story was the living thing they had built together, a sanctuary born from a secret left in the rain. And as the city moved on, the Shepherd Conti Animal Hospital thrived, a beacon in a neighborhood that had known too much darkness. It stood as proof that sometimes the most dangerous secrets don't destroy you. They give you a reason to build something bulletproof. And the man and the veterinarian, bound by a dog and a note, learned that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who you choose to protect. So what is the true story here? Is it a mafia romance, a tale of redemption, or is it something more fundamentally human, a story about the deals we make with our own morality when the only other choice is to look away? Catherine Shepherd and Alessio Conti's story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Can good truly be built with tainted resources? Does the origin of a sanctuary matter if the lives within it are saved? Their partnership, forged in secrecy and violence, ultimately created a permanent force for compassion in a neighborhood that desperately needed it. The hospital stands not as a monument to a mob boss, but as a testament to a simple, radical idea that saving one life can alter the destiny of countless others. This narrative taps into a deep psychological vein, the allure of the dangerous man made vulnerable, the fantasy of taming the beast with compassion. We are drawn to these stories because they simplify a complex truth, that good and evil are rarely separate territories, but overlapping countries within the same person. Alessio was not redeemed by love. He was redirected by a debt of honor. Catherine was not corrupted by power. She was hardened by necessity into a new kind of strength. The lingering question isn't whether they lived happily ever after. It's whether any of us, when presented with a dying creature and a bag of mysterious cash, would have the courage to do what she did, and the wisdom to survive what came next. Their world is one of stark choices, where every act of kindness has a price, and every fortress has a foundation built on secrets. Stories like this endure because they are extreme mirrors of our own compromises. We may not face mobsters, but we all navigate the gray areas between principle and survival, between who we are and what we must do to protect what we love. Catherine's journey from a struggling vet to the director of a bulletproof sanctuary shows that sometimes walking into the dark is the only way to bring a new kind of light back with you. If you found yourself captivated by this story of impossible alliances and the lines we cross for loyalty, you're not alone. This is the power of narrative, to explore the shadows without having to live in them. For more deep dives into the untold stories that blur the lines between right and wrong, make sure to subscribe. The next hidden world is waiting to be uncovered.